let's do it. Listen, we're going to do it for quite a prolonged period of this particular show. I don't think I've ever done a Journey of Insight where one subject matter is likely to go on for the majority, but here we are. Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course. I'm reticent and I'm loath to say it's been inevitable for some time, but it did feel like that. A lot of the noises, no Liverpool have pushed back on it and said that they're still hopeful for a long period. But of course, it did happen. It was confirmed on a Bank Holiday Monday, a rare Bank Holiday Monday off for all of us, which was wonderful. Let's do the initial. What did you make of it all? Clearly, the announcement video, the statement that followed. Yeah, how did you react?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't any great shock, I have to say. I think the longer it's gone on, and we've spoken about it almost weekly, haven't we, on this show, that the expectation has been that Mo Salah will stay, Virgil van Dijk will stay, and possibly Trent will leave, and then possibly it's turned into probably, and then I think by the sort of March international break, when that news comes out in Spain, you know, curiously, and the people I've spoken to and other journalists we've spoken to, it seems as though he did tell Arne Slot in sort of mid-March that his mind was finally made up, and then there was no surprise to hear that that's when the stories come out in Spain. So clearly someone on the other end of the line from Madrid is telling people there of the state of play, and that means that it was no real shock when he sat down to break the news on his own terms. Bank Holiday Monday, wasn't it? Someone had mentioned around March time that a social media video was in the pipeline, so you know, when we heard that it was coming at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, it was absolutely no real shock to me. And everything he says in it is nothing that you wouldn't expect, really. You know, he's talking about how much he loves the club and, you know, it's time for a fresh challenge and all that sort of stuff, whilst stopping short of revealing who he's going to go to. But yeah, I think gradually over time, I think it's become more and more accepted that this would be the way it'd pan out.
Yeah, it has certainly been. You touched on there, obviously informing Arne Slot of his decision. I assume that's when Liverpool found out that it was a definite done deal. And did Liverpool try and keep sort of persuading him and try and keep convincing him that this was the place to stay and twist his arm? Because we've known for a long time Liverpool have, you know, pushed and tried, and there's been reports that contracts have been offered months and months ago, over a year ago in some instances as well. But so Liverpool discovered it was done around mid-March. Did that draw an end to it, or did they still try to keep pushing? Yeah,
so the information that I've got was that talk sort of came to a bit of a gradual end around March time, and then he informed Slot that was his going to be his decision. I think his mind's been made up for some time, really. You know, he's obviously informed people at the club. Was it maybe 2 months ago now? But you know, I thought it was interesting listening to Arsene Wenger on the beIN Sport coverage on Tuesday night, where obviously he wasn't talking as though he had the inside information, but you know, Arsenal manager for the best part of 20 years, wasn't he? He sort of knows how this sort of stuff works, and he said that Real Madrid will have begun their charm offensive a long, long time ago, and I think maybe as far back as 2 years ago, and maybe he has had genuine doubts at certain points, and I think possibly he was looking to see how the new era shaped up under Arne Slot, and I think he's probably been a bit surprised by how well it's gone. You know, made this decision a little bit more difficult. You know, it would have been easier if Liverpool were struggling for a place in the Champions League for him to say, well, look, I've got ambitions to win the Champions League. I don't want to be fighting just to get in it. So it would have been easier for him to have made the jump, possibly in his own mind, if no one else's. But Liverpool have steamrolled the way to the title, and maybe he's made that has made the decision a little bit harder for himself, but he is determined to seek a fresh challenge. And you know, at a certain point, you have to say that perhaps the club have done everything that they could do to keep him, because his mind has clearly been made up.
Yeah, absolutely that. And it's interesting you use the word fresh challenge there, and that was obviously some of the wording in the video.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that in a bit more detail and how it's been handled really from start to finish by the club and by Trent in particular. But obviously Liverpool did hold out hope for a long time. Are we any wiser as to sort of Trent's timeline on all of this, really, and how he came to this decision? Because you mentioned it there, obviously he would have been well within his rights to see what life after Jurgen Klopp looked like, and it looked brilliant, clearly.
Yeah.
But with Real Madrid not quite being Real Madrid of more recent times, and obviously they're going through a bit of a turbulence spell right now when it comes to the manager might leave and what have you. Do we know if Trent ever had second thoughts at all about staying, or was this pretty much a done deal for a long period?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure if he had second thoughts or how far that went, but I think there's been a couple of times this season that's been quite instructive as to his mindset across the whole thing. You know, he hasn't stopped it. He stopped at a mix zone after the Bournemouth game in September, and then hasn't stopped since. And when he's given interviews to certain places and organisations, it's always been under the proviso that questions on his future is just quietly avoided. That's caused a little bit of pushback at times, and has been a bit of an issue. But that has been the way that he has wanted it to be. But when he gave that interview to Harriet Pryor on Sky Sports was it October time, possibly? When he gets asked, what would you rather do, win a Ballon d'Or, win the Champions League with Liverpool, captain Liverpool, or win something with England? I think they were his 4 choices, and he picked the Ballon d'Or, which I think Harriet even says on the video that was the one that she was expecting to finish bottom of that list. And I think that was quite a bit of an eye-opener to supporters as to how he's thinking and he's viewing his own career, and he's talking about wanting to be the best right back ever, and it's easier to be known in those sort of tones at a club like Real Madrid. If he goes to Real Madrid and wins 2 Champions Leagues, 4 La Ligas, whatever it may be, he might feel that he's catapulted himself into that conversation. So it seems maybe a little bit of a, he's thinking about himself. But I've no real qualms with him feeling that it's time for a fresh challenge and going to, whether we like it or not. I think Real Madrid are the biggest club in the world, and some Liverpool fans might disagree, but they've won 5 Champions Leagues in 11 years, and Liverpool quite rightly boast of having 6, and Real Madrid have absolutely dominated, haven't they, the last sort of 10 to 12 years in the European Cup, when they won the 10th one in 2014. So yeah, I can understand a desire to seek a fresh challenge. My disappointment is that he's doing it at a time when it just looks really exciting to be a Liverpool player. And who was it, Steven Gerrard, who said that winning 1 trophy with Liverpool would have meant more than winning 5 with Chelsea? I imagine the same should theoretically apply to a 26-year-old lad from West Derby. So it's disappointing that he feels that he can have more success elsewhere, but that's entirely his prerogative, and off he goes. Be interesting to see what the reaction is now. I don't think he's going to be subjected to major sort of booing or anything like that, but on the other hand, I don't think he's going to be given, a massive warm send-off that perhaps he feels he might deserve.
No, absolutely not. We'll touch on sort of what happens next of it all in a moment, but just to draw the line under the fact that now has been confirmed and the decision has been reached. And I think you're right. I'm just disappointed by the whole thing for my 2 pence worth, because I've struggled to get angry with it, and then I wasn't quite sure how I was going to react when it was finally confirmed. And I think I made this point on my own Twitter recently. I got angry when Michael Owen left and Torres left, but I was younger then. What I mean? I've seen it happen now, and even you could Jurgen Klopp leave the football club and you wonder what life's going to be like. Life's okay. Liverpool survived. Liverpool are okay. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at with it all. But in terms of Trent's handling of it, you mentioned a moment ago the fact that he's never really broached the subject at all in interviews. He's avoided it at all costs in certain circumstances. He's come out and said it's not going to get played out in public because his previous ones never were. There've been celebrations that a lot of fans have led into in certain ways, and now that looks different reflectively. And again, there is no right way to leave a football club, certainly Liverpool, when you are Trent Alexander-Arnold. However, now that line is in the sand and it is all done, what do you make, as a Liverpool fan, as a journalist, of the way Trent's gone about all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think all 3 of them have been massively contrasting. You've got Virgil, who's been fronting up every week to the point where he's not being asked every week about it, because if there wasn't an update on Wednesday night, why would there be an update on Saturday afternoon, for example? So he's just been straight batting it all season, and full credit to him the way he's handled that. Mo Salah at times has tried to, sort of stay off the grid, and then when he's felt it's time to speak up, he's come forward, and then he's sort of drop back when he's realised that the scale of the achievements is in sight and doesn't want to rock the boat. And Trent has just kept what was supposed to be a dignified silence, I guess, and as the season's gone on, it's become maybe a little bit of an undignified silence. He will feel that was the right way to handle it. Me, as a journalist, I obviously would have preferred them to have shed some light on the situation at various points this season. But
do you think that would have been better? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think that would have been better as a look optically as well in that? Because I think we've had dozens of conversations in different shows about what's he best off doing here. Does he come out and tell us that he wants to leave? Does he come out and just say, I want to wait till the end of the season? The timing of it is a thing now as well. Yeah, it's so tricky and it's such a difficult conversation. But yeah, do you think he'd have been better served being more open?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't suggest that he should have been sort of updating us every week in the way that Virgil was, or Virgil was coming out to the point where he wasn't getting asked about it all the time. But maybe after certain incidents, he might have been served just sort of offering a gentle update in the way he did in September. I'm thinking about particularly maybe after the West Ham game when he does that, when he scores. Was that sort of... Was that him dismissing the talk that was around media at the time that Real Madrid were preparing a bid? Was it his way of sort of asking the fans to stop talking about it so much? Perhaps all that chatter only went on because of the silence that was at the front of the house. All that left was room for speculation. So there certainly could have been one or two occasions this season where he might have been best served just offering some form of update, but he's chosen to do it this way, and I think it was very important to him that he announced it on his terms with a very calculated, strategic rollout of it, wasn't it? 10 o'clock across his social media channels on Bank Holiday Monday, followed by the sit down with LiverpoolFC.com. And I will wait and see what happens with external media, whether they get a chance to speak to him before now and the end of his Liverpool career. I think the next time that might happen is when he's in a white shirt at the Bernabeu at his unveiling.
Yeah, quite possibly. Let's talk about between now and the end of his Liverpool career then, because there's an element which suggests that he might actually be over earlier than we might have initially expected, which we'll discuss in a moment. But before we do, there's the immediacy of a game this weekend against Arsenal. There's a following game against Brighton. There's the final game against Crystal Palace. There's a trophy lift. There's a parade. How big a part does he play in that? And a lot of that might be instructed by his availability, his fitness. There'll be those out there that say, keep him away from it all. Let's just see Conor Bradley flourish and let's see what that looks like, because that's what the future is now. There'll be those, and you touched upon it earlier, that will give him a bad reaction. And I think it'll be mixed at best, personally, inside Anfield. Yeah. So there's lots of different, things at play here. How do you envisage it going? I mean, will Arne Slot just make decisions for the betterment of the team and trying to win games of football, or will we look at it as an isolated incident and go, you need to stay clear of all this? You can't stay clear of the trophy lift. He has to be involved in that, clearly. Yeah. Parade likewise. But there's a fear in me, personally, about all of this.
I mean, I hope it doesn't overshadow anything. I don't think it will. Certainly with the trophy lift and the parade, they're going to be two incredible days for every supporter to soak up and savour and remember for the rest of their lives, as they should be. So I don't think a player leaving in contentious terms is going to ruin that, no matter how good the player, and that's the way it should be. But between now and then, you've got 2 games, I guess, before the Crystal Palace game. Slot said on Friday that he's planning for next season. Everything he's looking at now is with a view to next season, so players are getting a bit of an opportunity, a chance to catch his eye. So Conor Bradley, for me, should be in that conversation. There's no real reason to play a player who is going to be leaving at the end of June, particularly when it's a game that you don't need to win and whatever else. I'd love Liverpool to win on Sunday against Arsenal, but if they don't, it means nothing in their season. It means Arsenal go 12 points behind them. So what? But I would like to see Conor Bradley get a little bit of a run-up now and show that he can be the replacement, and if Liverpool need to get some more creativity in the side than they can maybe do in other areas. I think that the thing for Conor Bradley is, has he shown that he's good enough? I think he probably has now. Has he shown that he's durable enough? That's the big question mark. And that will continue until it doesn't really. I think you've just got to put in a prolonged spell of fitness, haven't you? And I'd like to see that start this weekend and then continue for the rest of the season. Yeah,
me and you both on that front. Absolutely. I don't think there's any reason why not either, for what it's worth. But as you touched upon at the start, I just hope, beyond all hopes, that the ill feeling and the animosity towards Trent's decision doesn't overshadow anything, because, listen, I've waited my whole life for this. And any sort of dark cloud over it is not what I want to see. And that's not to say I'm not, upset by Trent's...
The thing that gets me is there's always those comparisons with Steven Gerrard, isn't there? And obviously Steven decided to stay, and Trent now is moving on. I think they're two very different characters. Yes. Personality-wise. You read Gerrard's book, you speak to him, you look at his interviews. Very introverted, very sort of erring on the side of caution. There's always this idea of inner turmoil over his decision to move to Chelsea and how much that weighed on him and how awful he felt as he weighed it up. And then ultimately he's decided that it was better the devil, and he's staying with the people who adore him and stuff like that. I think Trent's a different personality where he backs himself to go and move on, to sort of handle the criticism that comes his way as a result of that decision, and then go and flourish and thrive elsewhere in a new environment. Is one better than the other? You know, in the eyes of Liverpool fans, certainly yes, but there's just different personalities, different characters, and ultimately now, I think what this does do for Trent is leaves his legacy, you know, internally sort of linked to his exit. And I just hope for him that there's peace of mind once he does it, because you're a long time retired. You know, he's 26. If he has another 6 or 7 years at the top level at Real Madrid and wins X amount of trophies, and he becomes known as one of the best right backs ever, excuse me, he might feel vindicated by that decision. But as soon as his career ends, you know, I don't think he's looked at in the same way that Steven Gerrard is, that Jamie Carragher is. You know, might just be a case of, at best, ambivalence. You know, a bit of a Michael Owen, Steve McManaman shrug about it when he returns for, you know, whether it be punditry duty and stuff like that. And I think this idea, I think he said that on his video, that he'd like to come back to Anfield. He's still got his executive box there and all that sort of stuff. I think that is probably not reading the room quite well.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think the die might be cast on that personally. But anyway, we'll wait and see. Let's just quickly touch on the report of an early exit. Seemingly, these contacts or these reports certainly emerged hours after the video, and the world knew for definite that Trent's time at Liverpool was running out. Let's push it this way first, Paul. Do you think Liverpool will be open to the idea of this early exit? Because obviously 1st of June, the window opens, in inverted commas, that mini 10-day window, whatever it is, ahead of the Club World Cup. Do you think Liverpool open to that?
We spoke about this when it was purely a sort of hypothetical thing, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago now, and at the time it was, you know, how long's a piece of string, but now it's a very real prospect. I'd suggest that Liverpool wouldn't cut the nose off to spite the face. You know, would they rather move a player on in a month where they don't have games, when most of it is spent holidaying for the players, and it means you don't have to pay a high earner for a month? It means to get a bit of a nominal fee back in, so they're making X amount of money on top of the wages saved and the money that comes in. That would be the way that I think that Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes might think about it, a bit more coldly, and, you know, looking at it as a black and white business decision. But on the flip side, I'd understand them if they just put two fingers up to Real Madrid and say, absolutely not. You know, you can have him when you're having him, and he's contracted to June the 30th. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I think that's the way to leave it on best terms, certainly with the player, would be to allow him to leave, because you'd imagine he'd be quite keen to do that. I don't want to put words in his mouth, obviously. I'm not privy to his thought process, but if he's already heart set on Real Madrid, he's going to be Real Madrid playing in 4 or 5 weeks' time anyway by this point. And he probably wants to get there as soon as possible and play in this Club World Cup, then yeah. And if Liverpool do want to, I don't know whether they would or not, I don't know whether they care or not, but stay on decent terms with him, it probably makes sense to do that. And as you say, receive a bit of money back, save a bit of money in the process as well, and move on as well, I guess, is kind of the crux of it.
Yeah. But then you wonder, would Trent want to go into a competitive competition straight away and be expected to hit the ground running? And make no mistake about it, Real Madrid will absolutely be desperate to win this first ever sort of revamped Club World Cup. I'd hazard a guess that they won it more than any other club, really, given that they won 15 Champions Leagues, and the team from Europe is normally the ones who dominate that tournament. So, it's quite a lucrative competition now, isn't it? So Real Madrid will be determined to go and win that, really. And Trent coming in off the back of a long, hard, title-winning season at Liverpool, he will be expected to deliver straight away. Might he feel better to have a couple of weeks holiday and start in Madrid rather than go straight to the United States and be expected to perform straight away? I think that's something for him to weigh up. But it's funny, when this whole thing was coming about, there's a scene in the Peep Show, I don't know whether you've seen that.
I've watched Peep Show religiously, Paul, so talk to me.
Where Mark is he's facing across the desk with Jeff, his sort of arch rival, and he says, what would be the best bonus? Should I give him nothing, or should I give him a more pathetic bonus of £8.52 or something like that? And that's almost what Real Madrid...
He laughs to himself in
his inner monologue. It's almost what Real Madrid are looking to do here. What makes us look more dominant, getting him for nothing or getting him for a pittance, like 250,000 or whatever it may be.
Both are really funny.
Yeah. So if I was Liverpool, I know obviously people are more professional and whatever else, but I'd love Liverpool to say, get out.
Yeah.
You can have him when his contract's up at the end of June, and not a minute before.